This is the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, and the Buddhist religious experience. Siddhartha Gautama was born in around 560 to 480 BCE in Lumbini, Nepal, to wealthy parents Maya and Sudahana. This is a picture of him and his mother, with friends surrounding them. Gautama was immediately taken to a prophet, who declared that he would either become a great priest or a great king. However, to become a king, he would be required to be sheltered from 4 things: old age, a peaceful monk, a corpse, and a diseased person. Thus, Gautama was sheltered for the entirety of his childhood. He was always among prosperity, young, beautiful people, and never knew suffering. When he was 30, Gautama experienced the Great Renunciation. He finally was exposed to the 4 sights. He saw an old man, an ascetic, which he desired to become once seeing the peaceful monk, a corpse, and a diseased person. Years later, and still an ascetic, Gautama was walking by a stream one day when he fainted of weakness and fell into the water. The cold water made him wake, and he realized that even though he had done everything correctly to be an ascetic, he had not attained what he desired. So he went to eat a meal for the first time in years, but was seen by 5 monk friends who became suspicious of him. Gautama, full from his meal, went to meditate under a fig tree, deciding to meditate until he discovered enlightenment. In time, Gautama attained nirvana. He went from a man with no true understanding to one who was enlightened, who realized things that would become the most important concepts of Buddhism. He realized anicca, that life is impermanent. He realized that humans are subjected to a cycle of life, death, and rebirth, forced to a life of suffering because of tanha, or desire, thirst, and craving. He developed the concept of the middle way, or the Eightfold Path, a way of life that creates knowledge and leads to enlightenment. It is designed to focus on a life with no extreme indulgence or asceticism, thus eliminating tanha. Throughout the years, 3 important concepts are now prevalent throughout all of the schools of Buddhism, and those are the Sangha, the Buddha, and the Dharma. These are called, collectively, the 3 jewels. The Buddha is the first of the 3 jewels. He represents truth, and everyone is made of Buddha nature. This Dharma wheel is the second part, and represents the collective Buddhist teachings. The morals and ways to achieve enlightenment and liberation are meant to be gleaned from these teachings. The Buddha went to Benares after enlightenment and told 5 friends of his findings. Neither extreme asceticism nor extreme indulgence is possible to fulfill life. The middle way is required. The first Sangha was created by the 5 followers of Buddha. It is the 3rd part of the 3 jewels, and is known as the Buddhist monastic order. Monks who are predicted to die and be liberated, no longer a victim of the endless cycle. The 5 precepts are also Buddhist teachings. There are 5 fundamental things that all Buddhists are expected to adhere to: no killing, stealing, lying, inappropriate sexual activity, or using intoxicants. So, to answer the question of how Buddhist teachings affect followers in a capitalist society, Buddhists in this situation may be further challenged to succumb to tanha because of the presence of so much wealth, luxury, and power. In capitalism, people have the ability to become indulgent relatively easily, like finding a job that pays so well that one can go out and eat every other night, or having an unnecessarily large house. It may be difficult to resist the impulse of cheap fast food or expensive, elaborate clothing. The media that is portrayed, the Eightfold Path is more often than not portrayed in the media than it is portrayed, because in the United States at least, social media and television use immoral values or unkind words to talk about someone humorously, and it is the case that that kind of behavior is more acceptable in a non-humorous setting as well. In terms of the United States, the 5 precepts in Buddhism are not followed very frequently, particularly in terms of inappropriate sexual activity, thus for recreational purposes or any sexual activity that is not done strictly for the purpose of reproducing, and drug use. Lying is also prevalent in many large, complex societies. Though these societal occurrences do not force a Buddhist in a capitalist society to act against the Buddhist teachings of the Eightfold Path, 5 precepts, etc., it does make breaking rules, so to speak, less difficult. The first ritual that will be discussed is meditation. Meditation is a way to challenge the mind to become more concentrated, focused, and seek the true being of oneself and other pieces of the world. The goal is to have a more peaceful, aware state of mind about all things in life. There are 2 types of popular meditation. The first is loving-kindness meditation, or metta bhavana. Metta means love in the Pali language, an extremely important aspect of this meditation practice. This deals with sending one's metta or feeling the emotion or the feeling or emotion in regards to one person, to oneself, a friend, a person that you don't like or dislike, and an enemy, and sending that metta or those feelings throughout one's community and world. The second popular form of meditation is the mindfulness of breathing. This meditation can be done by people who don't practice Buddhism, while this is the one that's mostly done. Any person who wants to develop a clearer state of mind can meditate. Mudras are hand gestures used to communicate a particular emotion, like compassion, threatening, understanding, beyond misery, those kinds of concepts. Or, other concepts like asceticism, knowledge, leisure, or perfection. There are different hand gestures for different hands, and some that use both hands, and these are universal throughout Buddhist sects. So this is a great way to communicate between the Buddhist schools. Even if one doesn't speak the other's language, these mudras are allowing Buddhists to communicate Buddhist teachings. Dana is the practice of giving. It's something that all Buddhists try to do as much as possible. Dana aids in one's liberation from samsara, or the cycle of rebirth because of tanha, or desire. Dana creates good karma, taken from Buddha's teachings of the karmic law, where the good deeds or good karma benefit the life of that person and that part of the Buddhahood that goes to the other following lives, and the bad karma is the opposite. It will make that person have a less successful life ahead. Puja is a devotional ceremony involving offerings to Buddha. It is a practice that varies depending on what sect one belongs to, but it benefits one's good karma. Mahayana pujas are typically long and intricate, whereas Tantrayana pujas are varied in their lavish qualities. Pujas typically occur in the home, and they are daily, sometimes twice a day, but there are pujas that occur in large Buddhist temples like this one, and are performed by many Buddhists at one time. A statue of Buddha, or a stupa, this can either be a statue or Buddhist relics that symbolize him, or a Bodhi tree, is in the center of the ritual, and the worshipper bows to it. Then different offerings representing the 5 skandhas, or 5 aggregates of existence in Buddhism, like the senses. So candles represent enlightenment, or sight, or the 3 jewels, those are placed in front of the center of the puja. Chanting is also an element in the worship, as Buddhists recite religious texts that honor Buddha and acknowledge the 3 jewels and the 5 precepts. In conclusion, ritual shapes the Buddhist communal identity to a large extent. It develops individuals personally through meditation, puja, and dana, for example, making them more aware of themselves and growing their mindfulness, and making them more compassionate. They have more karuna of the Buddha and of all people. Through meditation, one grows their understanding of themselves and makes one focus on a personal or world issue and try to solve it or not. In the loving kindness meditation practice, a Buddha sends their love and compassion throughout people they know, both liked and disliked. Through dana, people develop their positive karma while helping others in the process. Through puja, Buddhists focus on the worship of Buddha, but they also understand that the Buddhahood or Buddha nature is in all things. Mujas offer a fantastic way to communicate with Buddhists of different sects and regarding emotion or positive and negative concepts like leisure or threatening. The practices give Buddhists their unique culture that is both shared throughout the religion and yet individualized. With these rituals combined, Buddhists develop into more understanding, open, compassionate individuals, and this collectively results in a more positive community. For the first sacred text that will be discussed, it is called Dhammapada, a sacred text only in Theravada Buddhism. The Dhammapada describes the nature of existence and the path to liberation. It's comprised of Buddha's teachings and is part of the Theravada sacred text called the Pali Canon, or the Pali Tipitaka. The purpose of the Dhammapada is to tell people of how to find the ultimate truth through heeding to moral values and becoming aware of their mind and consciousness. So this picture would be like someone trying to follow the path to liberation, to clear their mind, and go through obstacles throughout. The Dhammapada is for a wide range of people because it was passed down orally in 4 different dialects before being written down. It's also easy to read. This text was meant for Theravada Buddhists to easily access Buddha's teachings, even though they are very focused on the monastic order. That should be kept in mind. Karma, the Eightfold Path, and the Four Noble Truths are described in the Dhammapada indirectly as the sections of mindfulness, the mind, spiritual maturity, evil, etc. give verses of what to do and what not to do, and how to think about the world. The Dhammapada also provides instructions of how to rid the way of life of suffering from death. And one Dhamma is one piece of advice or one truth that Buddha gave, and there are 423 verses total. The next sacred text is called the Lotus Sutra. It is a sacred text in Mahayana Buddhism only, and it was originally written in Sanskrit, but it's debatably written in Buddha's lifetime or centuries after. The Mahayana believe that their sutras, including this one, were direct words of the Buddha. The Theravada, though, they believe that the Mahayana texts were created by later monks who wanted to alter Buddhist teachings, so this is a controversy between these 2 different schools. This text's true goal is to convey to all that one's present state is not one's true self, rather only Buddha nature is the core essence of an organism, so it really shows the Maya or illusion in the real world. It teaches that Buddha is pure and people are a vessel for this, but in order to reach liberation, everyone must fully understand their own minds. This mindfulness in Buddhism, especially Mahayana Buddhism, is pictured here in symbolic form. The lotus also brought about a very progressive concept into the ancient religion, and that is gender equality. In the Daughter of the Dragon King story, it is proven that women can become bodhisattvas, which will be talked about later, but they are specific to Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism, and it's teachers who achieve enlightenment, but they wait to be liberated so that they can teach others. But so this says that women can become bodhisattvas and achieve enlightenment and be liberated in one lifetime, just like males can, and through the same channels that men achieve liberation through. Though the female who does this in this story of the Dragon King, she transforms herself into a man to achieve liberation. The concept shows that one's true being is not male or female, thus everyone can reach liberation through meditation, embracing Buddhist teachings, and compassion. And now for the third sacred text is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it's also known as the Bardo Thodol, and Bardo means intermediate state, and this is a sacred text central to the Vajrayana Buddhism. It describes in detail the stages of death one goes through, as people who die are in a state between worlds for 49 days before they are sent to be reborn or attain liberation. This book is meant to be read to a dead person by a bodhisattva, and that bodhisattva guides the person to his or her new path. There are 3 parts in the Bardo Thodol. The first is dying, the second is the 49 days, and then the third is rebirth or liberation. The book tells the dead being to let go of all attachments to one's previous life, connecting directly to the Four Noble Truths of that life is suffering, and that's caused by desire, like attachment. So pictured here are 2 skeletons, where one body is fighting between attachment and detachment, between rebirth and liberation. The Bardo Thodol also says that life is suffering, and if the person does not let go of these attachments, like stated previously, he or she will be sent to go through another cycle of life. It is here that they must learn of detachment and ridding of desires. A dead person, according to this text, transforms from earth to water to fire to air to consciousness during the 49-day process. Depending on the extent of consciousness and one's good and bad karma combined, this determines if a person will be reborn or will achieve nirvana. All of these sacred texts are very similar to one another. Each of them discusses the path to achieving nirvana or moving on to rebirth or liberation. Each of them are directly connected to doctrines and beliefs because of the ideas discussed regarding samsara and the Eightfold Path, and rituals serve to make Buddhists experience the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, to understand the Buddhist teachings in sacred texts and their importance in each school's doctrines and beliefs. The Dhammapada of Theravada Buddhism focuses on the nature of existence and what Buddha's values of mindfulness and karma are, as well as the Theravada high value of the Arhats and the monastic order. That directly connects to doctrines and beliefs. The Lotus Sutra of Mahayana Buddhism has the Mahayana concept of embracing all Buddhists because they're known as the large vessel, and those who don't practice solely Buddhism, for it talks of the Dragon King's daughter and how she could achieve enlightenment, and stresses that everyone has the Buddhist nature inside of them. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is very thorough and is part of the Vajrayana Buddhist sacred texts. It focuses on non-attachment to achieve enlightenment, a major value in this school of Buddhism, along with the others. It also requires a bodhisattva and mantras to be spoken to the deceased body. So I believe that all of these sacred texts incorporate various characteristics of the schools that are unique to each other or overlap, and they are all full of Buddhist values and ritual references. Now for schools of Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism will be looked at first. It is also known as the Way of the Elders or the Small Vehicle because it's the most exclusive sect in Buddhism. It's also the oldest school. It was found in southern Asia, and the goal of Theravada Buddhism is to become a Buddha by finding enlightenment by yourself, and the monastic way of life is very common. Arhats are monks that have high authority in religion and seek to achieve nirvana, unlike the laymen. So the Theravada Buddhists who aren't in the monastic order don't try to achieve enlightenment yet. The practice of Theravada Buddhism is for the most part uniform. There are 31 planes of existence, or lokas, and 3 samsara realms, which is unique to this school. And then Theravada Buddhists, they believe in the 5 precepts and finding nirvana for oneself. Now for Mahayana Buddhism, this contrasting the Theravada Buddhists, they're much less exclusive. They're called the Great Vehicle because they're very open to all people willing to become Buddhists. The Mahayana Buddhists, that was found in the 1st century of the Common Era in Northern Asia instead of Southern Asia like the Theravada Buddhists. And their goal is to become a bodhisattva, which means one person first learning about the heavenly Buddhas like Amida, Kuan, and Yin, and compassion, and then becoming enlightened and choosing to help others reach liberation instead of liberating themselves. And there are many different categories of Mahayana Buddhism and variations, unlike Theravada Buddhism, which is more just like one way of being a Buddhist. And there are other lands where various Buddhas reside in Mahayana beliefs, and those can be reached through meditative practice. The Mahayana Buddhism, or Buddhists, they also use the 5 precepts, but they also have 5 additional precepts, and they think to find nirvana not just for oneself, but for the Buddhahood in total. Next is the Tibetan Buddhist school, or the Vajrayana Buddhism. This is known as the Diamond Vehicle, and it was found in the 600s. It's a mix of Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism because they have rituals like Tantra and mantras, which are chanting to worship, but also mandalas and thangkas. And thangkas are creations that symbolize impermanence. So also they use mudras like the other Buddhists, and meditation and compassion is very important. But in Mahayana Buddhist kind of teachings, they have bodhisattvas, including lamas like the Dalai Lama right here, that is pictured. And in Theravada Buddhist teachings, they also believe that, or the Vajrayanas believe that monasticism is extremely important. And they have the Bardo Thodol, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, as their unique sacred text. As for Zen Buddhism, the Zen school is known as the meditation school. Like the Mahayana school, it embraces the lay and monastic Buddhists. They believe in sudden enlightenment, or satori, and this can be reached through meditation and is usually helped along by a monk. It can also result in like physical kind of interactions between the monk to surprise the meditator, but the result of this sudden enlightenment is emptiness, or sunyata, and stripping away of all of one's being except for one's true essence, which is the Buddha nature. Meditation masters called Roshi guide the practice, and koans are riddles that are meant to make the mind work to allow for higher potential of enlightenment. There is a high value for beauty, like archery, beautiful gardens. Calligraphy is very important in Zen Buddhism, and elaborate tea ceremonies like the one that is pictured here. In the West, Buddhists started immigrating to the West around 200 years ago, and there are many forms of Buddhism practiced in the West now because of this. Buddhism, in terms of their meditation and philosophy, are followed by Westerners and people who aren't necessarily Buddhist. And in the West, Buddhism doesn't have to interfere with others' religions. People can practice both Christianity or Judaism and Buddhism. For theme 4, religious experience is to me the emotional or mental connection one has with their faith. I am not religious, but according to religious friends and the 2 given stories, people have an intense connection with their faith, whether that be hope and reverence for a deity or being, or a strong spiritual sense of the understanding of the world and people. The women in both stories were both trying to find mu, or their idea of enlightenment, and end their dukkha, their suffering in their individual lives. The first woman was devastated at the loss of her son in World War II and was angry about the world and her life. She did this meditating class because she was inspired by Nagasawa Roshi in her ability to understand others' pain without going through it. When the main character, the mother, when she finally found Mu, she realized that everything is Mu and Mu is joy. She discovers Buddhahood in everything. Through meditation, she grew her religious experience because she understood that meditation can be extremely painful when trying to reach enlightenment, because if one is not doing it correctly, but this is because of the attachment in her case, her own life. The mother's religious experience was trying and difficult, but her end result led her to a life of joy because of her deep awareness of Buddhism. The other story was of a Buddhist nun who felt unintelligent in her patriarchal society and built an elaborate shrine for Kannon, who is pictured here, the female symbol of compassion in Buddhism. She is discouraged, or the nun is discouraged from building the shrine because because everyone's religious experience is different. She felt that to apply her life to her religion and to achieve liberation, she should worship Kannon in that way. The nun later did the meditation retreat with Nagasawa Roshi and had trouble keeping her mind from wandering through meditation. After harsh discussions with Nagasawa, she finally finds Mu. In meditating and suddenly reaching enlightenment, the nun discovered Maya, where all things in the world are an illusion and do not at all encompass the goodness and reality of Buddha and Mu. Her religious experience is likewise expanded and evolves like the mother from trials of pain in worshiping and life to a clear, happy way of living because of this increased understanding. With this knowledge of Buddhism, I hope everyone has learned a lot. Thank you for listening.